When Abraham Lincoln gave his blessing to the building of the first transcontinental railroad, the Civil War was still raging. But two groups were ready to build it. 4 businessmen in Sacramento were breaking ground for the road to the east, and a company in the east headed by the ever-shady Dr. Thomas Durant, who had illegally made himself president of the Union Pacific, well, that company was ready to make millions, making plans to head west. Meanwhile, using a route over the Sierra developed by Theodore Judah, the Central Pacific started eastward. A year before the construction started, Durant had distributed $40 million in today's money to members of Congress to sweeten the legislation. It eventually granted huge numbers of acres along the track and money for each mile completed. Finally, on this date in 1865, the first tracks were laid out of Omaha. Now, it should be noted that to pay back political debts in Iowa, Lincoln had designated Council Bluffs as the starting point and the mile zero marker to be placed there. But Durant ignored Lincoln, starting across the river in Omaha. His reason, though, was sound. There was no bridge across the river. But his ability to read the compass was not sound, and his westward track laying from Omaha went south. Durant overrode the designs of his chief engineer, Peter Day, and headed south toward Sacramento. The line made a big oxbow loop. Durant claimed that the route was smoother, but by adding the loop, he made himself $500,000. Today, that loop is a hiking trail. Its farthest south point is near Papillion, Nebraska. Today, we remember the old route to the west, the oxbow curve out of Omaha, and the eventual straightening of the right-of-way. And there seem to be small-town train stations every 20 miles or less. The trip was full of interruptions. Steam engines, though, needed to stop very often for water. Today, the road west from Omaha is filled only with memories of the old stations, and nothing remains at some of those stops: Fremont, Clark's, North Bend, and Schuyler. At Columbus, old maps show the location of a station. It was there until the last decade. Now aerial photos only show a smudge. There's nothing there. In Grand Island, the old stations are gone. Small towns that once buzzed with rail passengers, freight, and traffic now only hear the Amtrak go through in the middle of the night. Finally, 3 years after the line opened from Omaha to Sacramento, a fragile-looking cast-iron bridge opened across the Missouri. Now trains did go coast to coast. That bridge would eventually be replaced by a new one. It's still there, carrying 50 trains or more a day. This area is nothing unique. The railroad that brought America west is now in history books and old photographs and empty patches of ground. But it was on this date in 1865 that it all started at Omaha. I'm Dennis Daly.